Hello, everybody, and welcome into Capitol View, your weekly webcast about the goings-on at the Mississippi Legislature, produced by the Daily Journal and djournal.com. I'm your host, Brad Locke, and joining me from Jackson, our Capitol Bureau reporter, that's Bobby Harrison. Bobby, how you doing on this Monday?
All right. How you doing, Brad?
Can't complain, sir. Can't complain. Well, finally got the wheels turning down there in Jackson, got some bills moving through the chambers of the legislature, and I actually have a big deadline coming up tomorrow on Tuesday. Got to get some bills out of committee, don't we, Bobby?
That's right. There's a few major issues that have yet to pass out of committee, including legislation whether there's going to be legislation taken up by the full chambers to change the state flag or to hold a statewide referendum. Thus far, no legislation has passed out of the chamber out of the committee to do that. So if none comes up by tomorrow night, then there'll be nothing done on the flag this year, which would be a little surprising in the sense that last summer, after the tragedy in South Carolina where the shootings at the African American church has killed several people, House Speaker Philip Gunn, a Republican, surprised a lot of people by coming out for a new flag. But now the question is whether Speaker Gunn is going to push legislation out of committee to try to change the flag or put it on to have a referendum on it, or just leave everything as it is, which is what a lot of his Republican caucus wants to do. So we'll know that by tomorrow night what's going to happen with that.
Well, a couple of bills I want to talk about in particular, Bobby. One of them has to do with same-sex marriage, specifically. I'll just read the name of the bill. The Protecting Freedom of Conscience from Government Discrimination Act, and it passed 80-39 last week in the Mississippi House. Basically what it does is it allows people to not aid in certain ways same-sex marriage, whether it's performing a ceremony or issuing a marriage license. Just some more details on what that bill's about, Bobby.
Yeah, that's also Speaker Gunn's bill, and it was passed it passed out of the House on Friday, which is normally, especially this time of year, is normally a getaway day for legislators, and they ended up debating that bill for about say 60 to 90 minutes Friday morning, and before it passed by an overwhelming majority, with all but one Republican voting for it, and all but a couple of, I think, 3 Democrats voting against it. This bill, if it does become law, which I think there's a good chance it will, it may end up in the federal court system being litigated for several years. It doesn't attempt to overturn the or of course it couldn't anyway, but it doesn't try to say gay marriages cannot occur in Mississippi. Of course, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized gay marriage last summer, but what this bill attempts to do is say if a circuit clerk doesn't want to issue a marriage license, or a justice court judge doesn't want to perform a ceremony for a gay couple, for instance, then the gay couple would have to go to the state or offices, state agencies, to find someone else to issue that marriage license or perform that wedding ceremony. And the bill came out of the Judiciary B Committee, chaired by Andy Gibson. He's a Baptist minister from Simpson County, and he feels very strongly against gay marriage, and he says that people should have a right to. If they feel as he does about gay marriage, they should have a right not to participate. He also says it could influence private businesses. He gave the example to me that a restaurant might not have to hold a wedding reception, for instance, for a gay couple, but he said it wouldn't prevent a restaurant from having to serve a gay couple just a typical meal or lunch, or supper or dinner or lunch. So the bill, I think the bill could be interpreted a lot of different ways, and like I said, it could end up in the court system, and who knows, Brad, this could be an issue that is ultimately decided by the U.S. Supreme Court and this new justice, whether it's the vacancy created by the death of Justice Scalia last week. How this bill actually plays out could be determined by whether President Obama gets to make that appointment, or a future President Trump, or Rubio, or Clinton. There's a lot of question marks about this bill as it moves through the process.
And you mentioned Andy Gibson, the House Judiciary B chairman, and he says it's going to be a quote narrowly tailored bill. And you mentioned the Supreme Court decision. The backers of this bill say it's not going to necessarily interfere with that, but it seems like it could still run up against that decision in some way, couldn't it?
Well, I mean, I guess depending on how you look at it, but obviously a gay couple could say, why should they have to go? Why can't they just, if gay marriage is the law of the land, as the Supreme Court said it was, why should they not be able to walk into a circuit clerk's office and get a marriage license like a heterosexual couple? So that would be the issue going forward, and how the issue would play out in the court system if this bill does become law.
Another bill I want to talk about, Bobby, school vouchers, which in essence would allow public funds to be used for students to attend private school, in particular students who cannot afford to move to a better performing school district or to a private school. And Bobby, this is a bill that is moving along. Went through the House Education Committee on Thursday via a voice vote. We talked about the same-sex marriage bill just a moment ago. This could, I guess, in a lot of ways, end up being an even more contentious issue, couldn't it, Bobby?
Well, yeah, I think this may, school, just the issue surrounding school choice, which there's a lot of bills dealing with school choice this session. I think those bills, and then the issue surrounding whether we're going to raise taxes to build more roads and bridges, or cut taxes to business, industry, and other people. I think those are the two biggest issues of the session. And as far as school choice goes, this is definitely the most contentious of the bills that are out there. This bill would give vouchers for students to go to private schools. It would also, I mean, theoretically, a homeschool parent could use a voucher to pay money to a mentor or tutor. Would be a more apt description to come in and tutor their child in their home, and not and use a voucher that way instead of the student attending the public schooling. And the bill, the first priority would go to special needs students to get the vouchers, and then after that, low income. But it's open to 1% of the total public school enrollment, right, of about 490,000 students. So the estimate is this would cost, if everybody if the full 1% took advantage of the bill, it would take about $30 million out of the public school system. At the time, it's been underfunded $1.7 billion since 2008. This bill, as it's written right now, has absolutely no accountability. There's all sorts of accountability right now in the public schools, as far as students taking tests to track their progress and to see how they compare with other students. The students in the private schools who got these vouchers would not have the same accountability as the bill is written right now. As the bill is written right now, the schools wouldn't even have to pass any type of certification or to prove that they are legitimate schools. Now, supporters of the bill say some of that's going to be tightened up as it goes through the process. We just have to see how it works out. But this is definitely it's going to be a big bill, and if it passes, would sort of change the face of public education in Mississippi.
You mentioned the Mississippi public education being underfunded over the past few years. I think the $200 million short this year. And of course, Initiative 42 and all that, that's still fresh on people's minds. So, public education funding has been a big issue here last year and a half. And so to have this, like you said, it's 1% of students, but it still could add up to $30 million. I'm guessing that opponents of this bill, considering the current state of things with education and the attention that's been given to it recently, I'm sure they kind of see this as almost, tone deaf. Would that be a word to use there?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, they kind of see it as a slap in the face, and it's 1% this year, but it would roll over every year. I mean, say a full 1% of the students took advantage of the voucher this year, they would stay in the system, and another 1% would be eligible next year, and it would just go on like that each year. So it could really add up over 4 or 5 years to a lot of money if it was a popular proposal and a lot of students took advantage of it. Now, last year they passed a special ed voucher bill where just special needs students could take advantage of these vouchers, and very few students actually took advantage of the vouchers. Most of the vouchers for that bill were most of the people who took advantage of that legislation were in the Jackson area, where there's more educational options in the private sector, and outside of Jackson there was very few students taking advantage of that the special needs voucher.
Bobby, let's move on to some legislation that I think everybody can get behind. It's certainly been a bipartisan issue, a little less controversial. But here in Tupelo at Veterans Park, they're wanting to put up a replica of the Vietnam Memorial Wall. It would be about 60% the size of the one in Washington, D.C. They just got to get the money, and they've got some private money raised, a couple $100,000. I think they need a total of like $875,000, give or take. So some legislators are trying to help by getting some money to help with this. What are they kind of hoping to do?
Well, I mean, there's legislation filed in both chambers, in both the House and Senate. In the Senate, new Senator Chad McMahon has legislation filed to, I think, asking for $750,000 in state funds. Senator Hobb Bryan, who represents part of Lee County, and Senator Russell Jolly, who represents part of Lee County, are both co-authors of that legislation, as well as Senator Wyman J.P. Wyman over in Tishomingo County, and some other legislators from Vietnam veterans from throughout the state who are in the state Senate. Similar legislation is filed in the House by Randy Boyd from Manatee, who represents the portion of Lee County where Veterans Park is located in East Tupelo, and Shana Gary and some others are backing that legislation. Now, they're asking for this legislation is asking for a direct state appropriation, but more than likely, if this does pass, it'll be part of the major bond bill at the end of the session, where they put bond construction projects throughout the state. They usually spend about $200 million on those bond projects, and more than likely it would be part of that package if it does pass. There's in that bond package, there's usually money for new buildings on the community college and universities and state office buildings, and there's some local tourism projects included in that. And if it does pass, it'd be one of those projects. Similar walls, replicas of the Vietnam wall in D.C. have been built in other states, and they've been very popular. The supporters of this legislation say Veterans Park is already such a nice park out there with all the amenities out there, and then it's almost within walking distance of Elvis Presley Park that the state's already spent about $3.9 million to improve. So it's just really a nice area that could attract a lot of tourists. And the more stuff there is to do there and to look at, the longer the people are going to stay and spend more money in Tupelo. So there's hope from the Lee County delegation and others that this will pass this year and they can get to work on that wall.
All right, Bobby, now time for our regular segment here on Capitol View. 3 things of note: the most impactful legislation, most impactful lawmaker, and strangest thing to happen in Jackson in the past week. So let's start, Bobby, with the most impactful legislation.
Well, I think I got a little theme going here, Brad. Most impactful legislation is going to be that just a school choice legislation, which includes the voucher bill, another bill that would allow students to transfer across state district lines from one public school to another. That's another bill that's pending, and then another bill that's pending would enhance the charter schools to open them up to more students across the state. And of course, the voucher bill that we talked about earlier. Those are all just taken together. Could be a very impactful legislation for the future of public education in the state.
Most impactful lawmaker this past week.
Well, I'm going to say, continue that theme. I'm going to say House Education Committee, John Moore from Rankin County. He is pushing a lot of that legislation we just talked about. And so I'm going to single him out as an impactful legislator for this week. Speaking
of John Moore, strangest thing to occur this past week in Jackson.
Well, John Moore is a very dedicated legislator. He's been there for a while, very conservative leaning, but he might have stuck his foot in his mouth when he was talking about the voucher bill. He made the quote that every private school in the state is beating the crap out of the public schools. Now,
that's one way to put it, I guess.
That's one way to put it. But first of all, that's not totally accurate. Right, I mean, there's some real good public schools, and there's some top-notch students in the public schools, and there's some good private schools in certain parts of the state. But I think that you would find that when you compare apples to apples as far as students from certain socioeconomic groups, that the public schools are probably performing as well or better than a lot of the private schools. And it doesn't do it doesn't do public education or private education in the state any good, I would argue, to make pronouncements like that.
Well, good stuff as always, Bobby from down in Jackson. Again, you're watching Capitol View. This airs every Monday live here at djournal.com during this current legislative term. If you miss it or you want to just go back and watch it again, you can catch the replay right here at djournal.com. Follow Bobby on Twitter, by the way, to keep up with what's going on in Jackson at Bobby Harrison 9. And check him out on the memo. He's on today's episode. You'll be able to find that shortly at memo.djournal.com. Also, download the podcast on iTunes or your podcast app if you don't have an iPhone. So, Bobby, thanks for joining us, and everybody else who watched, thanks for joining us, and have a good week.